Hi, well, thank you very much for having me here. I should just correct, I'm not actually a professor, I'm only a doctor. So I'm actually one step back from the on-the-face care. I'm actually a biochemist. It's interesting that we're talking about the biofilms just recently. I actually did my PhD on the structure and function of the glycoproteins that are found in biofilms and things like that. So I'm coming from the point of view of the general science behind what we're talking about, and that's what I want to talk to you about a little bit about today. So I'm going to talk about some general core concepts of the biochemistry behind what matters to pretty much everything but wound healing as well. And then I'll talk a little bit about what we've done. So I started in the pharmaceutical industry and I'm now moved into sort of the natural therapy industry. But what we're trying to do at MediKane is to take that rigor of the pharmaceutical industry and translate it into biochemistry and biology. And then I'll just finish off with a quick little thing about the actual products that we've got available at the moment. So let's start by having a look at some of the biochemical pathways that are important to wound healing. Should I not just... Why is that not going? There we go. All right. So this is a little slide I like to put up at the start of the talks because what I like to remember, and the other presenters have already talked about this a little bit already, but everything is related to everything. You can't isolate these things. We isolate things as practitioners and as scientists as a tool to help us understand things and to make it easier for us to control what has to be controlled. But the truth is, everything is related and everything matters to the benefit of wound healing. And the real core concept I want to get to today is biology is complicated. Okay, so there are 21,000 confirmed genes in our DNA, which code for an estimated 2 million different types of proteins. There are 9,000 proteins that have been identified in metabolism, of which wound healing is a part, 850 defined pathways, and every single one of them depends on nutrition for function. So if you are not giving your patients directed nutrition, not just good nutrition, you can be limiting the effectiveness of everything else that you do. So it's now well understood that the intestines have a significant feedback on all other systems in your body. And it's interesting when you're talking about when we were talking about the biofilms before, these are active systems. That's something that it's important to remember. And what the bacteria do and what anything that tries to coerce our bodies into doing something different do is they cheat those systems. So one of the functions of a biofilm is to actually convince your body that the wound is not ready to heal. And it's an active thing. So the bacteria in a biofilm secrete chemical signals which keeps inflammation going, which is why the wound can't progress. So it's not just a passive thing, it's not by accident. And so you've got to give the body what it needs to be able to change that outcome. And the microbiome, which you may have heard of, it's just the trendy word to talk about the bacteria that are actively part of our body, are an active part of our biochemistry. So, another concept that I want you to try and to get across is, even if you don't realize it, you're already using a lot of natural products. 46% of all 84.5% of all FDA-approved medicines come from natural sources, and 46% of them are still pretty much in that natural form. The only difference is the level of control that's used over them. That's what distinguishes so-called alternative therapies from mainstream therapies. And I want to be clear because often it's an us or them kind of thing. I think pharmaceuticals are great, okay? They're an active part of what you need to do, but they're not the only part of what you need to do. And one of the things which they don't really get enough time to or credit to is the pharmaceuticals actually require good nutrition to function. So the pharmaceuticals are pushing your body in a certain direction, but if you don't have the tools for your body to do that thing, it doesn't matter how hard you push. Okay? So, as we talked about the biological complexity, it's just too diverse. Okay, so far we've identified about 10,000 bacterial species that exist in your intestines, and that's probably about 20-25% of what's actually there. And we just can't control it the way that we'd like to. So you've got to trick it with other biological things, and the easiest way to do that is to let your body do what it's supposed to be doing. Where's my... Okay, so one way to think of medical nutrition is as a Galileo thermometer. Okay, so a pharmaceutical would be like pushing one of the bulbs. We've got something that we're trying to change. Pharmaceuticals are what we call pathway forces, and what you're doing is you're poking it until you get it where you want it to be. Nutrition is like changing the temperature. So what we're doing is we're affecting the entire body, allowing it to be in a different biochemical state, and that different biochemical state pushes things to where they want to be more easily. So if you're trying to get one of the bottom globes up, if you change the temperature, you have to push less hard. It's a very simple concept, which is incredibly hard to do. The other way to think about the things, and the final sort of core concept I want to get across to you is we have what we call hierarchies of need. And one of the things that human beings are exceptionally good at is surviving in non-ideal environments. And the problem is that we're so good at surviving in non-ideal environments that often we don't even know that we're in a non-ideal environment. So if you've got somebody with poor nutrition, they might come across as fine in general day-to-day life, but if you give them optimum nutrition, and optimum nutrition will be different for different things, then all of a sudden things work better. And I mean, I've talked to a lot of practitioners, and everybody said, they've got that one patient or that dozen patients where one day they're great, and the next day they're terrible. And the day after that they're okay, and the next day they're terrible, and so on and so on and so on. And one of the things that you have to understand about these hierarchies of need is they change all the time, and they're very, very quick. They go in time scales that we don't really appreciate as being a time scale. We're talking minutes to days, not weeks to years. So you can have good nutrition one day and bad nutrition the next day if you're not being very careful and controlled about it. So another way to think about it, our biochemical ability is a spice cabinet. You've got so many spices in your cabinet, and you've got so much of each spice, and your body goes, well, I need this much iron to replace my blood, and I need this much to replace my muscle, and I'm going to meter it all out, and I'm going to change it. But if I exercise and I'm destroying muscle fiber, then all of a sudden muscle becomes much more important, and so on and so on and so on. Okay? And pharmaceuticals, because they force these pathways, they can make you nutritionally deficient very quickly and catastrophically. So, for example, I work with metabolic conditions, for the most part, diabetes and things like that. One of the things that's known about metformin is it causes B12 deficiency. So anybody who's on metformin needs to have something to supplement their B12. They don't tell most people that, but they know it. So this is the kind of thing that we're trying to address with MediKane and MediKane. And the really important one is survival will always be chosen over optimization. So the most obvious example of that for wound healing is scar tissue. You can actually make scar tissue not form if you send the right biochemical signals to the wound. But because from a survival point of view, we want the wound to heal very quickly, the best way for that to happen is scar tissue. Scar tissue is not optimal flesh, but it's quick and it'll help you to survive. Okay, so you can tweak these things by changing what you give people and when you give it to them and how you give it to them. So when we're talking about hierarchies, and the other way to think about it is a stock market. Everybody's yelling for for what they need, and the person at the head of the stock market is meting out tickets. And the louder you yell, the more likely you are to get a result, and the more important you are, the more likely you are to get a result. And these things change over time very quickly. And it happens on those kind of time frames. And as I said before, the microbiome, it is not realistic to think of us as human beings. We have to think of ourselves as a colony of organisms of which part of us is a human being, because the bacteria that are in your system have a lot more say in what goes on than we like to believe, and have a lot more control over what happens to our own metabolism than the things to do with us do. So one of the very obvious and quick examples of that is they now treat depression with nutritional changes, because serotonin is used not just as a mood stabilizer, but for muscular function. And so if you're not getting enough nutrition to help your muscular function, your body sucks all of the serotonin out of your body to work for muscle function, and you get depressed. So you give the body what you need to be able to produce enough serotonin, and you feel good. But the other side of that is the bugs that live in your gut that like sugar release serotonin when you eat sugar. So that's why you feel good when you eat chocolate. That's why you feel good when you have sugary snacks, because the bugs in your stomach are telling you, this is great, we need more of that. But your body doesn't really use sugar very, very efficiently at all. It's not one of the good things to have in your system, unless you happen to be a bug. Okay, now, sorry, I'm having difficulty working out where I am in my presentation. So, very quickly, almost all biochemistry starts with digestion. Apart from oxygen and sunlight, pretty much everything that we get for our body to do things comes from what we eat or drink. The enteric nervous system, often called the second brain, controls a good portion of everything that we do. It acts autonomously, and as we said, the neuronal regulators actually come from your stomach. So we always thought that, for a long time, we thought that the vagus nerve was a one-way thing, our brain telling our guts what to do. But it's actually more information travels up from our stomachs to our brain than travels down from our brains to our stomach. 70 to 80% of our immune system is linked to our intestines, and obviously your immune response and your inflammation response is very important to wound healing. Very sophisticated feedback loops, as I said. And both positive and negative signals. In many cases, they're the same thing. Now, this is one thing that a lot of people have a problem with, and that'll become important when we're talking about supplements in a second, that the same thing that says do something often says don't do something when it hangs around for too long or if it's in a very large dose. So, for example, IL-2, interleukin-2 is a cytokine which tells your body to start its immune response. And if it hangs around for too long, it also tells you the immune response to switch off again afterwards. So digestion plays an important role in many conditions, diabetes, cognitive function, and so on and so on. And the actual number that is estimated is that of all the cells in your body, about 1 in 10 are actually human. 9 in 10 are bacterial. So what's different about our products? Now, what we've done is biology is way too complicated to try and replicate effectively. It's not enough to just say, oh, well, we know that we need these vitamins and we know that we need these minerals and these kind of things. What we're going to do is take foods that have the things that we know that we need and make sure that they've always got them. So the difference between MediKane and other fiber supplements is it's not actually a fiber supplement. What it is a collection of foods that are very high in fiber. Now, as most of you, I'm sure, are aware, fiber is what plays a role in the prebiotic, what they call the prebiotic effect. So it helps your bacteria, the good bacteria, grow, and it limits the bad bacteria. Problem is, it's not just the fiber. You need all of the micronutrients, all of the minerals and the antioxidants and all of those kind of things as well. And fiber supplements just don't have them. And it's not the same to take a fiber supplement and a vitamin supplement. Because as I said, getting a very large dose of something very quickly sends your body a different signal than if you have a little bit of it over a long period of time. So different bacteria live in different parts of your intestines and they need different foods. And so if you're not getting a food that goes all the way through the intestines, you're not feeding all of those bacteria. So you can have conflicting signals at different ends of your intestines. So here you've got a system where at the front is saying I'm eating too much because I'm eating very easily to absorb foods, and at the back of the intestines you've got a signal saying I'm starving to death. Not surprisingly, that causes all sorts of problems. One of the things that is quite difficult to get your head around from the metabolic disorder point of view, and also this plays a role in wound healing as well, is that as far as your body's concerned, nothing is wrong. Your body, when a person has diabetes, as far as they're concerned, they have no disease whatsoever, as far biochemically, because the signals that are being sent by the body are doing exactly the right thing, as far as the body's concerned. You have to change the entire biochemical framework to change the outcome. It's not like being attacked by a bacteria. And in the case of many of the bacteria, as I said, they will send these signals to tell your body everything's fine. And that's what happens with biofilms and wound healing. It sends the signals to say, you know what, you don't need to worry about attacking us. It's all good. It's one of the activities of a biofilm. And for the longest time, people just assumed that it didn't have any kind of effect or make any kind of difference because we reduce things a little bit too simply. And in nutrition, that kind of thing is happening a little bit now as well. So what I hear from a lot of people is, oh, but all I've got to do is eat well. And the answer is, yeah, absolutely. But what does that mean? When you say eat well, I've got to eat more vegetables. But which vegetables? Different vegetables have different chemicals in them, different antioxidants that your body uses in different ways. So the idea of medical nutrition is to say we're actually identifying the things that we know you need to have, and this is the amount you need to take, and this is when you need to take them, and you will get a changed outcome. And that's what we've done with the intestinal flora of the gut. So we use whole foods. We use different foods, we collect different things, but importantly what we do is we say, okay, we know it has to have iron in it, let's measure the iron. Because one of the things that's interesting is about the way our foods work now is the last 100 years or so of food technology has not been about making us well, it's been about being able to produce more food and preserve the food better. And I've actually done this. I've picked up a punnet of blueberries and measured the amount of antioxidants in 2 blueberries from the same punnet, and they differed by 10 times. There was 10 times more antioxidant in the one in my right hand than there was in the one in my left hand. So there's no such thing as fresh food anymore. If you're not growing it yourself, and there's no regulation or anything that says that you have to say that it is there. So that they're bringing in the regulations now for medical foods to say that that's what you have to do. And that's what companies like ourselves and Nutricia and things like that are doing, is they're saying, well, we're guaranteeing that you will have these nutrients in these products when you eat them. And you can see a medical improvement because of that. So just a quick breakup of what's in. It doesn't really matter for the terms of things, but the point is it's very complicated. So if the interesting thing about the foods in MediKane is this little, no, I'm not going to get in, is a little red brownie portion there, which is all of the micronutrients. So if you measure things like Metamucil or Benefiber or any of those kind of things, none of that other stuff exists. And the graph up on the right-hand side is the antioxidant content of psyllium husk compared to vegetable fibres, of which MediKane is made. So what does it do? How does it make changes? So we have a number of bioavailable carbohydrates and waxes. The waxes appear to be very important to our metabolic function. Interestingly, the waxes that you get off, natural waxes that you get off vegetables and things have very similar structures to a lot of the signals that bacteria use. So the bacteria that cause inflammation in your gut release signals which are very similar to wheat products and things like that. And the bacteria that prevent inflammation in your gut release signals which are very similar to the waxes and things found in vegetables. Now, of course, a lot of this stuff is actually removed when we process food because it makes processing very difficult to have waxes involved. There's a number of high-quality dietary fibres which lower the glycemic index of the food, and what that means is the food's being released all the way along your gut, so you're getting a very different outcome. As I said, we've got the micronutrients that have the anti-inflammatory effect, and importantly, again, the combination gives you a far better outcome than the individual components. So when they say red wine is good for you, they don't mean resveratrol, which is what they sell in supplements. What they mean is red wine. There's thousands of different molecules of which we've only identified half a dozen, and they all play a part. When they talk about fibres being good for you, what they actually measured was people that ate high vegetable diets. So if you eat lots of vegetables, it's good for you. If you take a lot of fibre, it doesn't make any difference whatsoever. It makes a little bit of difference, but really doesn't help that much. So it's the complexity that matters, and it's the form that it's presented into as well. So our intestines have active systems to take things into them. So there's active transport and passive transport, and the active transport is the one that we want to try and engage. The passive transport is what things like really high concentrations of vitamin C in a vitamin C tablet, or that kind of things. That's what they rely on, and it causes different biochemical responses. Sure, you get some vitamin C, but your body doesn't understand why it's there because those active transports haven't been engaged, and so it behaves differently. Now, if you're massively deficient in vitamin C, it doesn't matter. You need vitamin C however you can get it. But if what you're trying to do is optimize the body's ability to cope, you need to use these active transport systems. Yeah, I lost one. So, taking into account the active digestive system, the three main benefits that we get from MediKane is that it provides the nutrients in the natural form. It's the combination of the fibres, allow them to be absorbed all the way along the gut and allow them to be absorbed in a fashion that causes an optimal response. And the prebiotic of the nature changes the microbiome. And it's really important. I mean, the microbiome has been shown to be essential to everything from obesity to mental health. And it's absolutely essential for wound healing as well. One of the things that's really interesting about your microbiome is it's actually the best antimicrobial system that you can possibly have. Because if you've got the bacteria that you want in trillions and trillions and trillions in your gut, it's really hard for something to take hold, even on your skin, which is interesting. So you can actually measure the successful outcome, and they have done this numerous times, on how well a wound will close based on how good your intestinal health is. You can actually hand somebody a bunch of slides and say, tell me whether this person's going to have a good outcome or a bad outcome, and they can look at the intestines and go, this person's going to have a bad outcome, this person's going to have a good outcome, this person's going to have a bad outcome, with a very high degree of accuracy. So even though we don't really understand what's going on as much as we would like, we do know that it's very real and it makes a massive difference. And it's so complicated that we really can't control it any other way than nutritionally and biologically. You can play around with it a little bit with drugs and things like that, but really not with the finesse that you need to be able to make it work. And one of the real conundrums for people like yourself is sterile environments are a terrible idea in almost every situation. It's really, really not good to use antibacterial stuff in everyday life because you are far better off protected by the bacteria that should be living in the system than you are having no bacteria at all. But of course the problem is that when the bad bacteria are in, it's completely catastrophic. So practically, we can't control the microbiome as well as we'd like, so practically you have to just get rid of everything if you can. That's the best practical outcome. But in real terms, if you can give your patient's body what it needs to self-adjust, you're going to have a much better outcome for absolutely everything. And one of the things that makes MediKane quite useful in a practical sense is that for a lot of these benefits to see, you need a lot of it. Okay, so when they talk about fibre in your diet and stuff like that, they're normally talking 15, 30 grams, which I don't know if you've ever tried to have 15 grams of psyllium, but it's a lot. It's really uncomfortable to try and eat. One of the main benefits of MediKane is it's only a few grams. You get the same kind of benefit out of only a few grams. So I won't lie and say it's the kind of thing that you'd go, geez, I really want to have a glass of MediKane in the morning, but it's certainly manageable and acceptable enough that people can actually routinely get it to have the outcomes that they want. So this is just a diagram to describe the differences in the guts. I've really talked about this. I should apologise just quickly. This talk is normally about an hour and 15 minutes long, so I tried to cut out a lot of the detail and just keep the general principles. So one of the things that we don't really talk about, of course, is oversupply of nutrition is just as bad as undersupply in a lot of circumstances. So you don't necessarily want nutrient-dense foods. It's kind of paradoxical to what we'd think, but this idea of having easily absorbed foods, it's actually not the way our body is designed. Our body is designed, for the most part, to try and pull nutrients out of things that are very hard to get them out. And that changes the biochemistry of the body if your body doesn't do that. So they've actually shown that if you just make food harder to digest, you get an improved outcome, even if it's exactly the same in all other ways. So I've talked about all of that. I do have all of the detail if you would like to see it later on, and we do have the presentation in its full form on our website. So this is just to show that we do actually change this bacterial species in the guts. So the blue line is when you're taking MediKane, the red line is when you're not taking MediKane, and the bacteria up the top are good and the bacteria down the bottom are bad. So bad bacteria are reduced when you're taking foods like MediKane, good bacteria are increased when you're taking, and these equate to medical outcomes and have been shown to equate to medical outcomes. This is just a quick slide to demonstrate that the bacteria themselves actually make use of the micronutrients, so it's not just for us. The bacteria, we look at these things as antioxidants, but the bacteria actually look at them as metabolic foods. If you don't have the foods, you might have a lot of bacteria. They're not healthy bacteria. If they're not healthy bacteria, you're not healthy either. It really is that simple. Slow release we've talked about. One of the things which is quite interesting, and again, sort of against what you would normally think, is that a high dose of vitamins can actually reduce nutrient absorption. So if you're taking a vitamin tablet which is very high in a particular type of vitamin, your body will actually switch off its absorption because I've got enough vitamins, I don't need to absorb them anymore, and you'll actually decrease the benefit that you're getting out of your foods by having high dose vitamins in certain circumstances. Vitamin C is a very good example of that. Vitamin C you burn a lot of when you are defending against a disease. So if you have a disease, it's quite good to have high doses of vitamin C. But if you don't, and you take high doses of vitamin C, your body starts switching all sorts of things off, and it's actually not very good for you at all. So really the whole mentality of the way that we do these things has to change. Okay, I'm out of time, so the two products that we have are MediKane Plus, which has been formulated specifically to relieve constipation and fecal incontinence. It's been trialled extensively in recuperative care wards and has shown to be highly beneficial over the current treatments. We've had placebo-controlled randomized trials, so we're doing the pharmaceutical level trials to prove the effectiveness. And even though it's not a fibre supplement, you use it in the same way and at the same stage. So you just mix it in with a glass of water and give it to them with their meal or whatever, and you don't have to go to the next stages of treating constipation and things like that. And it's easy to use because it doesn't form gels. So that's just a quick comparison of the treatment protocols. You guys know more about that than I do, so I won't try and teach you how to do your job. The other product that we've got at the moment is MediKane D, which has been formulated specifically for blood glucose management. As I said, diabetes is actually your body's metabolic controls being out of whack, and it's well understood that diet control is a major form of treatment for diabetes. It's still based on intestinal health because digestion is everything when you're talking about biochemistry. The dosage regime is different and the specific ingredients are different. So what we've got is a base of intestinal health, which we've split into customizing for two specific conditions, and we're growing the range all the time. So we're now working on a product which treats systemic inflammation, so things like arthritis, psoriasis, and that kind of thing, and so on and so forth. So just very quickly on the kind of rigour that we'd like to put into these things. Royal Melbourne Hospital's completed 2 trials, have been published in medical journals. They're currently running a 3rd trial. We've got medical practitioners running it in their clinics. One of the nice things about being a food is it's safe. You don't have to worry about side effects. The worst case scenario that happens to people is they get more fibre in their diet, which everybody really needs. So there's not really any risk associated with foods, which is really nice for me personally after being in the pharmaceutical industry, where 90% of what you did was try not to kill people with the drugs that you made. So you can just try it out and see if it works. It works for a lot of people. If it doesn't work, there's no downside from the patient's point of view. So we've also got a ARC grant with Macquarie University that's got 3 PhD students running at the moment. That's where we've got a lot of our data from, and we're just currently setting up trials with Royal North Shore Hospital, Baker IDI, the Macquarie Teaching Hospital, and various clinicians. So thank you very much for your time. Hopefully that was helpful.